I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, California's drought is bad, but some experts say it could get even worse. They're warning about a possible mega drought.
I'm Amitha Sharma. It's the Year of the Veteran in San Diego County. We'll talk with Supervisor Bill Horn about what it means. And would you like to turn your next vacation into an adventure? We've got tips from the experts at the San Diego Travel and Adventure Show.
And it's the end for a one-time center for Chicano activism in San Diego's South Bay. We'll look back at the Aztec print shop. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. If you think California's current drought is bad, experts are saying that things could get a whole lot worse for the western United States. KPBS science reporter David Wagner joins us now to explain new predictions of a mega drought. David, of course, it sounds like one of those sci-fi movies of the week, but what is a mega drought?
So a mega drought is basically a drought that drags on much longer than normal. So, for instance, California's current drought, we know it's already stretched the state's water supply, but it's only entering its fourth year. In contrast, mega droughts can last many decades.
And that's what California could be facing, right?
Well, yes, according to a study published today in the journal Science. And not just California, but all of the Southwest and Central Plains. The researchers looked at centuries-old drought records and used multiple computer models to forecast future drought. And their data showed that in the second half of the 21st century, the western U.S. could suffer from the worst era of drought in 1,000 years.
Now, why would this happen now?
Yeah, well, there's always been some natural variation in this region. Megadrought struck here in the 12th and 13th century and may have led to the fall of some Native American groups. But the researchers say that the difference this time is that human activity in the form of climate-changing greenhouse gas emissions will be driving extended droughts.
KPBS science reporter David Wagner. Thanks, David. President Barack Obama has signed a bill aimed at reducing suicides among veterans. The Clay Hunt SAVE Act includes more support for service members as they transition to civilian life. It also offers incentives for mental health professionals to work for the Veterans Administration. But the president says helping vets is not just the government's job.
Every community, every American can reach out and do more with and for our veterans. This has to be a national mission. As a nation, we should not be satisfied, will not be satisfied until every man and woman in uniform, every veteran, gets the help that they need to stay strong and healthy.
There's also a new focus on helping veterans here in San Diego County as well. Okay, Amitha Sharma has that.
San Diego County Supervisor Bill Horn, as chairman of the Board of Supervisors, has designated 2015 as the Year of the Veteran. He joins me now to talk about that designation and other issues. You're a Vietnam vet yourself. Why did you pronounce 2015 as the Year of the Veteran?
Well, this is my fifth time to be chair. It's my last time because of term limits. And I just thought it was important. Currently 22 veterans kill themselves every day in this country. We've lost more veterans to suicide than we had in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So that's a terrible number. It's a staggering number. And I think the county of San Diego should do all it can to assist this population. Over 1/3 of the county's 3.2 million people are related to the military, either active duty or family members or retired. And so of our 3.2 million people, over 1 million of them are related to the military. So I think it's important that we have this Year of the Veteran. We're going to do away with the current Veteran Affairs Office, and we're going to make it a department, which will be a direct report to Nick Massione and Health and Human Services.
What does that accomplish?
Oh, well, that'll put all the services for veterans in one location. It will allow them, they can do legal, financial, housing. They can do all the things that they need from the health department in the same building, same facility. They won't have to go to multiple sites or multiple websites. There'll be counselors there at the office to take care of their needs. So
Supervisor Horn, you've also talked about opening a new facility called the Veteran and Family Resource Center in Escondido, which will be run by the interfaith or the nonprofit interfaith community services. What, if any, connection does the county have to that project?
Oh, well, there's two separate projects. The resource center that we are opening in Escondido is this summer. I just went to the groundbreaking for the interfaith one, which I support. That is another. They house veterans, what have you, homeless. That's they're involved with. Tom and Dorothy Hawthorne donated the money for that facility, and that's a private deal. That's not the county. The counties will be with Health and Human Services, the Department of Veterans Affairs, as I pointed out. It'll have a new director. All those services will be in the same building with Child Protective Services, Health and Human Services, those kinds of things.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some other issues. I understand that county planners are looking at an updated version of the Miriam Mountain project. Back in 2010, your colleagues defeated a similar measure that included a 2,000 home development north of San Marcos. Do you still want to see a project like this get built?
Well, I have to put the population somewhere, and I'd much rather have development along the corridors that already exist, where there's already infrastructure, like the 15, the 78, the 76. Those areas in my district grows the most. Every 10 years I have to redistrict. That's how I had to give up Escondido years ago. I had 72,000 too many people. The last redistricting I had about 33,000 too many people. So I have to, every time I have to reduce my district and give that away to my colleagues in order to balance the books, so to say. So if you're going to build new developments and put our new population somewhere, I would much rather do it along transportation corridors and corridors where I already have infrastructure.
The City of San Diego has put together yet another task force to study building a stadium for the Chargers. What, if any, role should the county have in this discussion? Well,
to start with, we haven't been invited into any of these conversations. We were a part of the first stadium authority that built Jack Murphy Stadium years ago. We gave them Friars Road, and we were part of that deal. When they went to the seat guarantee issue, the county withdrew because we didn't want to be guaranteeing any seats. If Mayor Faulkner would consider inviting us in, we could see what we might be able to do. We could float some revenue bonds. As long as it didn't affect my taxpayers, I could be for that. But the county has, we have a AAA credit rating, AAA bond rating. We have a $5 billion budget. We're a huge economic force. And so if they invited us in, I will see what my colleagues would say. Of course, that would be a board decision. But as far as I'm concerned, as long as the taxpayers don't have to pick up the tab, I can see how else we could support something like that. And
we will close it on that note. Supervisor Bill Horn, thanks for coming on the program.
All right.
Now, the San Diego Chargers are going to be meeting Monday with that stadium task force. The committee is supposed to recommend where to put a new stadium and how to pay for it. At the same time, a measure to build a stadium in the Los Angeles community of Inglewood has gotten enough signatures to go on the ballot there. Inglewood's council could adopt the measure outright or put it up to voters. An NFL stadium in Los Angeles could impact where the Chargers play. Contract talks have resumed between dock workers and the cargo companies that manage 29 marine terminals along the West Coast, including here in San Diego. The ports handle about $1 trillion worth of cargo a year. Work has been delayed because of the ongoing labor dispute. The sticking point now, who gets to arbitrate future labor disputes? San Diego now officially has an open taxi market. Today, the Metropolitan Transit System gave final approval to a measure that lifts the cap on the number of taxis that are allowed on San Diego streets. Beginning in April, anybody that meets the minimum requirements can run their own taxi business in the city. The 12-3 vote wraps up years of contentious debate over how to best reform the taxi industry. Land in San Diego is becoming so valuable and natural habitat so scarce that it's now profitable to take developed lands and turn them back into natural habitat. KPBS North County editor Allison St. John tells us how it works and why some people aren't buying into the idea.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, start this project. All right.
On a recent morning, this group met in a fallow tomato field in North San Diego County to break ground on a unique project. Therese Bradford of the Army Corps of Engineers was one of half a dozen people from various public and private agencies to grab a shovel and turn over the first symbolic clod of dirt.
Well, this is a very exciting project. We've been actually working on turning this area from tomato farm to conservation. We've been wanting to do that for about 15 to 20 years. This is one of the most important parts of the San Luis Rey River for restoration.
Lots of wildlife depends on the San Luis Rey River, but for decades the Singh family has grown vine-ripe tomatoes in these fields, and a section of the river has been channeled into a straight canal, very different from the wooded habitat on either side of the property. Jeff Novak is with Wildlands, the private mitigation banking company that plans to move tons of dirt to recreate the winding riverbed.
Currently, the San Luis Rey River is constrained to this narrow Arundo-lined canal, basically, that's armored with, giant riprap stones on the banks. And so, essentially we're going to be setting the river free and allowing dense riparian vegetation, including willows and cottonwoods and mule fat, to colonize the river, shade the river, and really the river will be able to meander and spread out into the flat agricultural lands out behind us there.
This is a rendering of what the site's going to look like.
The Singh family was reluctant to let go of even part of the land it has farmed for so long. But Brian Monahan, vice president with Wildlands, says they were able to offer a strong incentive because restoring wetlands generates millions of dollars in mitigation credits.
My guess is that they'll be probably around $500,000 an acre. It's not cheap. So we would sell these wetlands to third parties who have permits from either the Army Corps or the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. That could be your local highway department. It could be the city of Oceanside. It could be a developer who's developing somewhere here in the region.
Monahan says this is the first time he's found that recreating habitat rather than preserving habitat pencils out for mitigation credits.
As land gets more and more scarce, and that I could see where we're actually ripping concrete out at some point in order to do restoration.
This is not the only site where a mitigation banking company is interested in returning the land to its original state. A few miles to the east lays the shuttered San Luis Rey Downs golf course, where the owners want to sell to another mitigation banker who would turn the fairways back into riparian habitat.
$13 million.
A local group called Save the Downs has sprung up, and John Frandell is leading the charge against what he sees as an attack.
This is the very first time that any large-scale developed property has been attacked by a mitigation bank and to be destroyed, to be 350,000 cubic yards of dirt to be moved out, and then to be fenced in the middle of the community. This hasn't been done before.
Frandell says Save the Downs is considering an initiative to block the mitigation bank.
But it's the transfer of the wealth from all these homeowners. All these homeowners have lost 25 to 30%. Now their values have gone down today because of the abandonment of the golf course and the threat of the mitigation bank.
To Frandell and his neighbors, riparian habitat is death to real estate values.
I can tell you, look behind me. This is the natural habitat.
Therese Bradford of the Army Corps says she's urging the mitigation banking company, Conservation Land Group, to work with the community to meet their concerns. This is, she says, a learning process.
I guess it depends on your definition of open space. Some people think of that as open water in a lagoon. Other people might appreciate riparian. Other people might think that's a ballpark.
Returning land within urbanized areas back to its natural state and selling it as mitigation for development elsewhere is a new concept, Bradford says, but it could become more common.
I think this is a great example of a private and public partnership that really works for the landowner, the Sing Farms and for Wildlands, the banker. And I know that people are really knocking on the door. There's a huge need for it.
However, even the project at Sing Farms took well over a decade to get to the point where all parties involved were ready to break ground.
How much more do we have left, Cindy?
Alison St. John, KPBS News.
Thank you all again.
It's not even spring yet, but some parents are already thinking about next fall's first day of school. One deadline in San Diego Unified is quickly approaching, and joining us to talk about it is KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler, who's in our newsroom.
Parents want their kids to go to the best schools. For some parents, that means not sending their children to their neighborhood school. In San Diego Unified, if you want your kids to go to one of their specialized magnet schools, you'll need to apply by this Sunday. The principal of Franklin Elementary says the competition for a place at some of the popular magnet schools can be tough.
Some schools more than others, it's harder to get in because they're very well established in their magnet status, and there are waiting lists.
It's important to note that each of San Diego County's 42 school districts admit students in its own way. For example, Sweetwater Union High School students let students transfer into any of their schools at any point in time if there's a spot open, and Cajon Valley Union School District officially accepts applications from January 15th to March 1st, but you can apply after the deadline and hope a spot opens up. Be sure and check with your school district, and for a link to San Diego Unified's online magnet school application, go to kpbs.org. It's Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
This Sunday is also the deadline to sign up for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, and amid all the public relations pushes to get people to sign up, there is this. President Barack Obama mugging in a mirror for a BuzzFeed video. Amid all the silliness, he does mention the February 15th deadline, although he had a little trouble with the word February. The video is aimed at younger Americans. Here in California, 1.3 million people have signed up for coverage. Not doing so means a tax penalty next year. It is never too early to start thinking about vacation. Amitha Sharma tells us about an event this weekend that aims to expand San Diego's travel horizons.
For those of you with wanderlust and questions about how to begin an adventure, the San Diego Travel and Adventure Show is at the Convention Center this weekend. More than 1,500 travel experts will be there to answer questions about cost and offer ideas on destinations. John Golich is creator of the trade show. He joins me now along with Wayne Dunlap, a travel expert and author of Plan Your Escape: Secrets of Traveling the World for Less Than the Cost of Living at Home. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
John, what are the highlights of this year's travel show?
Well, I got to tell you, it was our first year here in San Diego last year. It was our best launch we've ever had in the city. We do them in 7 cities around the United States. This year it's grown by almost 50%. So the show floor is the biggest it's ever been, and we have record numbers of people signing up. So we're all excited about that. But the travel show is really all about really having you follow your travel dreams. And we have stages from experts speaking. We have cultural entertainment. We have a culinary stage. But the important part of those 1,500 experts flying in from around the world right now to join us at the show to talk to you about your next trip.
And so, Wayne, you're one of the experts who will be there on Saturday.
I am.
You have travel tips, and one of them is to follow the disaster. Explain that.
Well, follow the disaster is pretty amazing. We had to figure out, because we've traveled to 100 countries now, we had to find a more economical way of doing it. And this is one of our best tips. We went to China after SARS, remember the mask, and we went to Bali after the bombing. We went to the Greek islands 2 years ago after the big demonstrations in Athens, and that's a perfect example to demonstrate follow disaster. Is that, remember, the demonstrations were being publicized all over TV, but we went out to the Greek islands and they had no problems. But about 50% of people canceled their trips to Greece because they were concerned about the demonstrations. So we were negotiating with hotels during the peak season, where normally you have to get 6 months advance warning to booking, and we were getting for $50 a night with breakfast thrown in. And so if you can pick your places by follow disaster,
it's a win-win situation because these people have to make their living with tourism, and when tourism drops off, you're helping their families, and so it's win-win. You get a great deal, they get tourism, and it's called follow the disaster.
And so there's this unpopular spots during disasters, but what are some of the popular options that travelers, American travelers, like to choose, both domestically and abroad?
I got to tell you, the first thing I always tell people when they ask me that question is separate two things. One is your vacation from two, your travel dreams. So you always need to get away just to relax and unwind. That's a vacation that you may want to do sun and sand, a cruise or something like that. Then there's the wanderlust in you, right? That you want to see something exotic, explore cultures, get out in the world and get a little adventure in your system. So sometimes you need to do both. And, you know, great places are here in the U.S. National park areas are red hot right now. I think that's a great option for families.
And what are some of the activities that people can do?
Well, you know, for example, at our show, we have a few activities. We have a rock wall on the show floor, which kind of gets you into like the Yosemite mode, right? We have a dive pool where if you never scuba dived before, we have dive masters there. They'll take you right underwater in a wetsuit and a tank and let you try to experience that. And then maybe you want to go to South Pacific or the Caribbean, which you can meet right on the show floor. So we do those kind of little activities on the show floor that also bring you into where you want to go on that big vacation or big trip. And that's what kind of gets people all excited about it.
And Wayne, the cost of traveling has skyrocketed in the last decade, but you've come up with an ingenious way to circumvent that.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, one thing we tell everybody, especially people here in San Diego, they're sitting on a gold mine. You rent your home. Instead of having that cost of the mortgage and the property tax and maintenance follow you as you travel, now you can get it paid for and have some positive cash flow for your trip. People love coming to San Diego when you can rent your home, and it's much more easier than you think. We use a website called Vacations Rental by Owner, the VRBO, and we list it on that. We get tons of people, really good people. We can vet them, and it's safe to rent your home, and we get a lot of revenue that way.
John, what are some common myths that people have about travel?
Well, I think one of the common myths is that's expensive, right? And I think as Wayne's showing you, he can travel the world for less than it costs to stay at home, right? And you can pick places. For example, you want to go on an exotic vacation to Thailand or even India. You'll find that the actual cost of travel while there is significantly less than, say, staying in San Francisco or going to New York. So you can have a great cultural experience and wanderlust and see different cultures and get a 3-star meal or 5-star meal even for $10 or $15, where here it would be a couple $100s. So the myth that travel can be expensive is how you want to do it. Now, sure, airline fares are different, but for example, Europe's red hot right now. Value of the euro is down, almost on par with the dollar, and there's so much extra capacity added to transatlantic flights right now that European airfare is down almost 10%. So you could actually get places for a lot less than you think.
And we have more information on the show on our website. John, Wayne, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. When the frontiers of science hit home, Miles O'Brien reports on the latest robotic arms. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
A one-time hub for political activism here in San Diego has closed its doors after 45 years. When Aztec printing got started, Chicanos were pushing to open doors and make positive change. KPBS assistant producer Maria Elena Castellanos looks at the history.
The faded pictures on the walls of Aztec printing tell the story of struggles, protests, and victories within the Chicano movement in San Diego and all over the country. Jerry Apodaca was a member of the Committee on Chicano Rights, an organization that was headquartered inside the shop. In its last few days, he helped pack up and close things down. Apodaca was drawn to Aztec printing in the 1970s while registering people to vote.
It gave the community a voice, first of all, a place to come, the disenfranchised, a place to come and be heard.
The owner of Aztec printing is Herman Baca. He started the business in his garage in the late 60s with a printing press he bought from his old boss.
People started coming over, and pretty soon, there was half business and half movement politics, sort of a community meeting place.
Baca was at the vanguard of the Chicano movement and earned a reputation as a Chicano rights activist, a printer, a historian, and a leader.
I guess printing presses attract politically inclined people.
He, along with others, were involved with things like fighting for farm worker rights, getting more Chicanos and Latinos to vote, holding boycotts and protests against police brutality. Baca says threats were made all the time. At one point, someone broke all the windows in front of his shop. A police investigation listed the incident as a hate crime, but it didn't stop Baca or those involved with the movement. Now, the digital age forced Baca to shut the presses down. What's next? History. Baca said he'll finish archiving a collection of documents and photos from the Chicano movement now housed at UC San Diego's Mandeville Special Collections Library.
There's an old saying that if you want a solution to a problem, you first have to know what the problem is. But the only way you can know what the problem is you have to understand history.
You can learn more about the Aztec printing and the Herman Baca archives on our website at kpbs.org. Another day of very warm temperatures tomorrow. Lows are going to be in the 80s for the coastal areas, and then it's going to cool just a bit for Valentine's Day. The inland valleys will see temperatures in the upper 80s tomorrow. They're going to be dropping down into the upper 70s over the weekend. Up in the mountains, the sunny conditions are going to be around with us. Temperatures in the mid to the upper 60s, overnight lows down in the 50s and 40s. And for the desert, mid 80s during the daytime with plenty of sunshine, and then cooling off at night into the 50-degree range. Of course, you can find all of tonight's stories on our website. It's kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back here again tomorrow. Have a great evening.